We're here in the west of Wales doing this beautiful coastline hike at the northwestern tip of Wales, which is quite beautiful, and we're kind of looking for seals, which we haven't seen any yet, and no puffins yet, so partner is eagerly looking for them. I think it's beautiful, and I always like to share these quiet moments with you. And as you can hear, my voice is still a bit stuffed, and my face, I think I have allergies on top of a cold. But it's getting better, and being outside really helps, I feel like. And walking outside really feels like that's the best thing to do. I mean, it's really striking how different you feel when you walk outside with a beautiful scenery as opposed to just sitting inside or sitting in a car. You feel just warmer and more energized, even if you are a bit sickly, which I hope you're gonna excuse me for. So there's a group of hikers. I always feel a bit self-conscious talking in front of them, but they're walking somewhere else. It's fine. Look, there's one lonely sailboat in the distance. It's beautiful. I've never really sailed, maybe once with a cousin at Bodensee, but I'm not sure if that's the hobby I should pick up. I'm sure it's fun. I don't know. Und Hobbys gesehen. Und schöne Felsen. Was hat eine coole Farbe, Schwarzeli? Was hat eine coole Farbe, ne?
Ja, mega schön. Mega schön. Und die Steine, dass die alles so gibt.
Warten, dass sie durchgelaufen sind. Right. Alright, so what I thought I would talk about a bit today is the state of the world, and if things are gonna get worse and worse, if crises are just gonna pile up on each other, and whether we actually can see an end or a light at the end of the tunnel, because right now it doesn't feel like it. Obviously there was COVID, now there's the war, Russia, Ukraine. COVID isn't really gone, so the question just becomes, okay, what the hell is going on? And there's so many other crises, be it, I don't know, homelessness crisis, police violence, the exploding cost of living, exploding cost of housing, inflation. I mean, I could name so many things which are going really wrong, it feels like. And you could obviously say there are always crises, but it really does feel like right now I don't know, the frequency of them seems to increase. When you're about 30 years old or 20 something, you already lived like very significant crisis in your lifetime, be it 9/11, Iraq war, Afghanistan war, now COVID. We had several economic downturns, the internet bubble, and then 2007-8, the big mortgage crisis and the economic recession following this. And now, I mean, it looks like an economic recession. And that's not totally atypical historically speaking, but judging from the more prosperous time, it feels like between 1950 and 2000, it seems like things are really not really getting better, and that's the depressing part. We want things to get better. We expect things to become more modern, more democratic, more transparent, and right now it doesn't really feel like it. How the hell is it possible that one nation just invades another nation nowadays? I mean, I thought this time was over. This time of just countries taking other countries with weird pretexts. How the hell is this still happening? This is really, I don't know, depressing to think about it. That we haven't become wiser and smarter and more enlightened than that. I think on the one hand you could obviously say the Ukraine war doesn't really affect us that much, which is obviously wrong, because I mean, here in Europe there is already happening a refugee situation that hundreds of thousands, millions of refugees pour into Europe, which is good that we could take them on, but the long-term consequences in terms of so many things is important as well. But then you have to look at the bigger picture, at the macroeconomic scale, how Putin seems to strategically destroy wheat and other supplies, military equipment, but it seems that he's strategically looking to create, on top of an oil crisis, a food crisis, which is already happening, and of course the poorest countries get hit the worst. Could be African countries which might be hit hardest from famines. So it's very likely that more migration movements will happen, more refugees coming from Africa, and that Putin is, similarly to Erdogan in Turkey, trying to strategically use humans, refugees, to blackmail Europe and so on. I don't even want to talk too much about the details, but it really seems that Putin doesn't value human life very much. I've looked into his life a bit, how he came to power. People say he's a smart, strategic guy. I'm not sure. People say he has cancer now. I don't know. But the thing is, and this has historically been true as well for other leaders in Russia, the lack of care for human life. Like sending very young Russians not from Moscow or St. Petersburg so much, but from the provinces, from Siberia, from Chechnya, to die as meat shields, so to say, in various conflicts, has been true for centuries, since the Russian Empire exists. And I don't know, I feel like it's a terrible way of thinking, like not valuing life of young people, throwing them away. This is how all the wars happened back in the day, and just sacrificing young men and apparently it's fine. I mean, if the ratio gets skewed a bit, there are more women than men, then they're gonna repopulate eventually. I guess that's the logic, but it's very cruel and inhumane, obviously. And just this stupid idea to revive the Soviet Union, it's just so nonsensical. I mean, I think for younger generations who grew up with Western media, but also with anything, with a globalized technological world where we talk to people from different countries, we have an exchange, we might communicate with people from Russia or with people from Brazil or with people from the US, with people from different countries in Europe. It's just so outlandish that we want to revive some stupid idea and become the next Napoleon or Charlemagne or whoever. I don't know who Putin wants to be, Stalin or Hitler, I'm not sure, but it's tiresome, and obviously I would prefer if this war ended. And it's not everything very one-sided. Is Ukraine a very corrupt country? Yes, it is. I think it was the most corrupt or the second most corrupt country in Europe. However, I do think it's fair to say that Russia miscalculated the whole ordeal. They thought Zelensky would easily give up and flee the country, which he didn't do. He rose up to the challenge, and now I don't know if it's much better, because now there's for weeks now this terrible war going on with thousands and thousands of casualties on both sides. There's propaganda on both sides, obviously, but it seems the Russian one is a bit more outlandish. Everybody says you are a war criminal, and then the US says no, Putin is a war criminal, and Putin now says Zelensky is a war criminal. I mean, all of this is just childish and just, I don't know. I think I had a dream with Putin as my father or something. It was really strange, but he was whipping us. It was not a great dream. But I don't even want to lose myself in the details of what's happening and everything. I'm sure you have your own opinions, and I'm not even saying it's that easy to comprehend, because we only have the Western media for the most part, which also skews the narrative in a certain direction. And sometimes I don't love it, to be honest, either. Like the way that our media portrays the war, almost celebrating when Russian generals die, and talking about this bridge where all these tanks were killed off, showing drone footage and almost loving it on Reddit. There's like a whole subreddit showing footage of people getting murdered by drones. I don't know, I don't like it. I don't like either side, but why do you need to invade a country? I mean, there's no reason for it. And this whole denazification propaganda by Putin seems so outlandish, but also maybe shows us that we've been too quick in using that word Nazi in the West to just describe people who we don't like, who we disagree with. Everybody was a Nazi, and now that Putin uses the same strategy, we should hopefully learn that this is it's naive, it's simple-minded, it's not smart, and it's an easy way out, and it's an easy way to dehumanize your counterparty, saying they're all Nazis. Similarly, Ukraine apparently calls the Russians orcs, which might be true because they seem to be quite brutish and not that smart, but I think that's also an easy way to dehumanize the other party, which I think is, I guess, necessary in war. In order to kill without thought, you need to dehumanize the other party, and you're gonna find a lot of evidence for the other party being evil, because there's war crimes on both sides, I'm sure. But it's terrible. It's all around terrible that we live in such a time. It's the biggest conflict in Europe since Second World War, I think. And it's depressing. I guess the more abstract and overarching question is, do we get better as a human race? because it did look like we had a half century of stability behind us now, with more and more countries becoming democratic, with less and less wars. The hope was that the nuclear bomb game theory idea would work, that nobody would invade other countries because the threat of nuclear fallout was just too significant, which so far seemed to have worked, but now people are really openly talking about using them, and I would really hate to live in a bunker or something for years and having Fallout, the video game, become a reality, and us living off of bottle caps as a currency. This would not be my ideal future as I envisioned it, to be honest. And you know what? My hope is really that those old people, those authoritarian macho men, die off. I just want them to die finally. Please, just die. Are there gonna be new ones coming? Sure. I mean, there's new Kadyrovs and everything, but if you look at most world leaders, they seem to be more reasonable than some bloodhounds that just want to have war and act like some kind of warlord instead of a real governor. At the same time, it's kind of frustrating how slow we as a human race progress. I feel like there's more stagnation than anything, and if I remember correctly, it's not my idol at all, but Elon Musk said that he's kind of frustrated too about the lack of progress that we're having. He doesn't see that many radical innovations happening, and in a way he's right, I guess, because, no, actually it's Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel is always complaining about the lack of real innovations. He kind of complains that after the internet, and then there was, I guess, the Industrial Revolution and the car and the telephone. What are the radical innovations in our lifetimes, aside from the internet, which really transformed the world? Smartphones, kind of nice, but it's just another computer. We're not really making so much progress when it comes to space travel. We haven't gone to Mars yet, really. We haven't gone to the moon again. We haven't, so many things that old books, if you look at them, they look into the future, like books from the 1960s who make predictions about the 2020s, all think we already have flying taxis, flying cars, and so many technological advancements that aren't there yet. So I do see the point too of saying, hey, what the hell is going on? I mean, I think there's also a cognitive bias at play here, because our lifetimes are so short as humans, and technological and societal evolution is so slow. It's quite slow compared to that, even though historically it's accelerating, I guess, the advancements we make and everything. But also our populations worldwide now start to stagnate, so I guess statistically there's going to be less Einsteins maybe, and less Teslas, and less people who make radical changes. And also it feels like everything is kind of discovered already, and there's not that many frontiers where you can revolutionize the world. Maybe renewable energies would be a great field where hopefully we're going to see some great changes. But even there, I mean, we're still doing the same stuff as 10 years ago. Some stuff is even getting worse. So it's not really obvious how we're getting better. And I'm not even talking only about the technology. I'm also talking about the human consciousness, I guess. All these flaws that we had thousands of years ago already, envy, greed, lust, seem to be as prevalent today as they were back in the day. And also ignorance. I think it's remarkable how with the internet and with all the knowledge of the world at your fingertips, people still have such a fundamental lack of understanding of the world, of history, of politics, and just are very susceptible to populism and very susceptible to propaganda. And to me, honestly, this is one of the key learnings of recent weeks and months, how effective propaganda works really. It's really a miracle that nowadays our governments don't use it more strategically almost, because it's actually really easy to completely brainwash a whole country. I mean, North Korea would be the prime example where people really think that Kim Jong-un, I think is his name, the guy with the funny hair, he is their supreme leader who is like God-given and who I don't know, fought bears with his hands and discovered many things. And he has these ridiculous videos of him with rockets and everything. And people really eat that shit up. I mean, it's so easy to just cut off the internet, just have a few state propaganda channels. It works really, really well. And it similarly works with Russia. Most of them don't speak any language aside from Russian, and they get their RT and their other Russian channels, which is obviously very one-sided. So propaganda works really, really, really well. And language can be a good helper in this regard, because we still have all these different languages. And if you only speak your country's language, and if your country only has a few TV channels and no free internet, boom, you have your perfect cage, your perfect bubble where you can spew whatever information you want to have. So in any case, it's remarkable how we still live like this. At the same time, and this might sound quite harsh and heartless, most people listening to this video aren't directly affected by the war, aren't fighting for either side. At least I hope not. If so, my heart goes out to you. But we still, especially younger generations, Generation X, Y, Z, millennials, have significant crisis, and for us it becomes apparent that the living standards that our parents had is not achievable anymore, and that can be very frustrating, because the prime example is the cost of living. Buying a house is just so outlandish for most people, most young people. It's so unachievable that it's really depressing, and the question becomes, why would I work all the time if I can't even buy a simple house, or like even an apartment is almost unachievable. Where I live in Zurich, like a single or a very simple apartment with like 2 rooms might cost 2 million US dollars, or maybe even more, I don't know. Maybe not super simple, but in any case, like a house might easily be $3-4 million. And so who has 3 or 4 million? It's only old money, because just with a salary you almost cannot make this money. Okay. And it seems like the situation has similarly become worse in many countries, such as Canada. I think Australia is in a big housing bubble right now. The US is always at a very high level. So in many parts of the world it becomes completely unachievable to ever have your property, which is a big crisis, because it's, you could say, almost a basic right, and one of the key motivators why we work so hard and so long hours, why we wage slave away. And if you take away that carrot, I'm not sure if people are going to be happy. At the same time, I feel like there's a big push for workers' rights, for unionization, especially in the US. In Europe there's more workers' rights, but in any case, I feel like people are kind of fed up, and now there's inflation coming on top of it. People notice how stuff becomes more expensive. Gas prices are insane, which, like, back in the day, filling our car up would be, I don't know, 70 US dollars. Now it's 130. It's like just doubled, and it makes our vacation now twice as expensive almost, I guess, in some sense, because of all the costs we have on top. So I think it's very understandable for people, and especially young people, to be pissed off. Is it the boomers' fault, all of it? No. Could they have done more? Yes, I'm sure. They could and should have done more to build a more sustainable economic system. They shouldn't have subscribed to mindless consumerism and more and more and more. They should have taken better care of the environment. They should have pushed more for renewable energies, all of this stuff. So we got the deers here. Okay. Apparently there are deers here. Wow, this looks so cool. The watercolor, I don't know if you can see it, but it's beautifully green. Azure. Yeah. So in any case, back to the initial question, are things getting worse and worse and worse? I think no, honestly. I'm mildly optimistic about the future, I gotta say. And I might be wrong, obviously, because I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not the Oracle of Delphi. I cannot look into the future. However, I feel like things will get better again. Looking at the most urgent crisis we have, Russia, I very sincerely hope that this is not going to devolve into a world war, that nuclear weapons are not going to be used, and that hopefully, I don't know, probably Putin will have to show that he was victorious, so he will just occupy some areas of Ukraine for now, which is terrible, but hopefully he's gone soon, this lunatic. Secondly, COVID, I'm still a bit hesitant to say it's over, but I feel like people are just tired of it, and they're not going to wear masks anymore, and they're not going to put needles into their arms anymore with unclear effects. And I think people don't want to get a vaccine that they have to renew every 2 months. So this golden era for big pharma has maybe ended now. They've made good money, but I feel like we have to learn from this, and this is key. We have to learn that we can't just, I mean, maybe my hopes are too high, but the way this whole thing has panned out was not ideal at all. The way politicians behaved, there was so much corruption on all sides. There still hasn't been a good objective investigation as to where it came from and what we can learn from the whole virus. To me, it's insane that in some dubious labs people combine different viruses without good security measures, and then instead of objectively reporting on it, they try to cover it up, which very much seems to have happened. This is a nightmare. And I don't know, we as humanity, I think it's a good lesson for us. It's a good humbling lesson, because we really suck at most of, like, everything almost. We suck at crisis management, we suck at investigations, we suck at science, we suck at so many things. Our whole scientific community is a bit, there are questions to be raised as regarding the objectivity of studies with regards to side effects. I'm not even an anti-vaxxer, I'm vaxxed myself, but so many things that if you look into it, you just see it's fishy and fishy and fishy and fishy. It's very dubious. my hope is really that we can learn as humanity, that we can in the future have better regulations when it comes to these experiments, for instance, and with regards to Russia, that we stop these lunatics from seizing too much power. There have to be checks and balances in place to make sure that old grumpy men don't play out their power fantasies of becoming the new Dracula or whoever the fuck they want to be. Okay, that's not acceptable. One person should not have that much power. It should be more like Switzerland, where you have a committee of 6 or so people who actually rotate, who you don't even know. They're not celebrities, they're just kind of unknown people who have a good track record and who are just kind of leaving you alone mostly. I really have a vision for politics where it's much less about a popularity contest and much more about competence. People who become politicians should have relevant work experience in their field. They should have worked outside of politics for at least 10 years, I think. They shouldn't be older than 70 years, definitely not. Biden is not a good idea. They should have shown an impeccable track record of ethical and social conduct, and they should then become more like project managers rather than leaders. We don't need leaders, we need smart people who allocate the resources in a smart way, who then reach out to the right experts to make decisions, and everything should be weighed with pros and cons very transparently. Should be like a blockchain or something, or some kind of public database where people can log on to and see like a project plan. These are the different projects we're working on right now. One is environment, one is education, one is military, one is infrastructure. And these are the expenses, these are the projects that are being built. To have transparency and also have accountability if people screw up. If people screw up and make the wrong decisions over and over, they should be let go immediately. There shouldn't be this weird idea that you can just, like the German defense minister, her name is Lambrecht, who keeps on flying her son out with helicopters. She just says, no, I'm not going to quit. It should be possible to fire those people. They're incompetent. They wouldn't survive one day in the free economy because they're vastly incompetent, and they should be fired right away. I don't want to talk too much about this system, but it's not that difficult to come up with a better form of democracy. Instead of a stupid popularity contest with parties that are outdated, and having the two-party system like in the US is even more stupid. There should be competence should be rewarded, and there should be the possibility of the people to get rid of people who are transparently incompetent. And there should be certain checks and balances, certain requirements have to be met before people can be let go. But most importantly, one person can never, and I repeat, never have as much power as Putin has right now, or as Kim has in North Korea, or even I think the US president has way too much power. He has the possibility to start a nuclear war. He just has too much power. I think it's with Trump we saw how dangerous it is if you have a guy who cares more about his reputation and about his golf courses than world peace. Start tweeting at Kim and starting these weird feuds with people. That's too dangerous. We shouldn't rely on one person who was elected by popularity contest. And I'm not saying everything he did was terrible. All I'm saying is one person can never have this much power. And I think we humans, for some reason, we're almost wired for submitting to a strong leader and to trusting in one person to guide us. But that's wrong. history shows over and over that one person cannot be trusted, even though there are some good leaders, maybe Churchill, even though he also did some bad stuff, and maybe there's Thatcher. I don't really know who was the good leader. Maybe Obama, you're gonna say, was a good leader. I don't know. But just as much as there are good examples, there are bad examples. So let's abolish this shitty system. Right. Yeah, let's just get rid of it. So again, why am I optimistic? I think we are in many ways, due to the internet, growing closer. I mean, I think it's awesome that people in the West like BTS and like Korean bands. I think it's awesome that people on TikTok dance together to songs, even though that app, I don't really like it and it's strange to me. I think it's awesome that people go on YouTube and watch videos together. But also, I think it's awesome that Wikipedia exists. I think in many countries we're moving in the right direction. I think the fact that we get rid mostly of royal families is great. The fact that all this old money, I think we need to find better ways to tax old money better, like old rich families who might own all the houses. They just have too much power, and it's unfair for those who don't have old money. What I'm trying to say is, apparently there was a study, like the 50 most wealthy families in Toscana in Italy in the 1500s, so 600 years ago, are still the most wealthy families nowadays, which means old money is quite stable actually. And if you already own 10 houses or like a whole city almost, because you're so wealthy, it's pretty hard to lose that wealth, and you have the right advisors and everything. And so I think we got to get better at taxing this old money, because otherwise with interest and with house ownership, things are going to get worse and worse, and the disparity between rich and poor is going to increase more and more. It would be so easy to solve these things by, for instance, saying there is a progressive tax on house ownership, on real estate ownership. If you own 2 houses, the property taxes increase to 20%. If you own 5 houses, 50% or whatever, you could maybe even have a higher increase in it. So basically after 2 houses, it shouldn't be profitable anymore. I think it's not a great business model to live off of real estate, renting it out, being a landlord. I guess in some senses it doesn't have a great return always, and it can be a hard and tough job as well, but there's definitely a problem with pricing young families and young professionals who don't have old money out of the market, which can be addressed, but the fact that politicians all over the world don't address it, and even Trudeau with this stupid law that says foreign buyers can't buy them but companies can, so they can easily circumvent this law, shows that politicians might have an interest in things staying the way they are, because they profit off of the system as well, and because they're just corrupt and they're bought out, which again proves to me, don't give one person that much power. It should be more of a committee of intelligent, smart people with a great track record who very transparently document everything they do. Are we moving in that direction? I'm not sure, but I hope that eventually we will realize that this is a system that we need. And also, I think we have to still consider, with many other things that are happening right now, there's oftentimes also a good side to the medal. I think with Putin invading Ukraine, those naive people in the West saying we just need love and peace and Woodstock, it's naive, because there's always going to be, for now there's still evil people in this world who, if you show any form of weakness, they're going to bite, they're going to attack you. And the fact that military budgets are increased in Germany as well, and Europe, might be a good thing, because we can't always rely on the US, and we have to, as long as there are bullies, you have to defend yourself. And similarly, hopefully with the COVID thing, on the one hand, maybe the fact that we trust less in the media and the politicians and even the so-called science might be a good thing in some sense. Maybe we're hopefully going to have better security standards in the future by not making weird experiments with bats and so on and combining them with other viruses. That's not great either. I'm just really hoping that we as humans learn from this. It's not directly clear that we're becoming smarter, and I read somewhere, I think, that the IQ on a global level almost stagnates or decreases. I'm not sure why that is. Sometimes I'm hesitant to say older people were much tougher and harder working than younger people. From my professional experience, I see more young people working hard and being smart, and the old people just kind of losing their edge. And honestly, the ones that I've met and also at work, they just stop learning. When they reach like 40 or 50, they just stop learning and they just want to coast. And they just want to get their paycheck without doing much, and that's unfortunate. And it's terrible that in Europe we can't really dispose of those people who don't bring any value. But that sounds a bit harsh, I guess. I'm talking about personal experience here. So yeah, can you see those cows? Cool. Should I be scared that they're attacking me? They're very dark, actually. Kind of cool. Is there anything or any other reason why we should be optimistic? I think many things that are happening right now, which is also a stagnation of the population, can be a good thing. Why do we have to grow all the time? The fact that it can also lead to real estate prices becoming cheaper again. Also the fact that oil becomes so expensive now makes the transition to electric vehicles all the more good and smart. So hopefully we will invest heavily into renewable resources now that the old resources become way too expensive, and I can't wait for those Saudi princes to not have any money anymore. You see, like almost everything that on the first look looks bad might actually have a good side to it, a positive correction of the economy or of the world that might follow. One other example might be, our naivety when it comes to military. Maybe we're going to stop that, and we're going to become a bit smarter about this, and we're going to hopefully eventually also change our political system, that one person doesn't have absolutist power like Louis XIV, the Sun King or whatever he was called. Similarly with food prices and with meat prices, which are vastly increasing, maybe it's a good thing that we don't eat that much meat. We shouldn't eat we shouldn't eat meat every day probably. And the fact that we have been doing this so far has been terrible for the environment. I'm not even a vegetarian myself, but to me it's obvious that we should eat meat more selectively, eat good meats, and stop with the whole factory farming BS that we started. Because I just read a study in certain parts of Germany, out of 10 cows or pigs or chicken that are being raised to become food, only 8 survive. So 20% just die before being slaughtered, which shows how terrible the hygienic standards are and how much animal cruelty is going on. What else? I think everything that really sucks right now could eventually become something better. There could be a correction. I think the schooling is way too expensive in the US. You guys should figure out that it's not okay to pay like 100k or have a 200k loan for young people. And also the fact that healthcare systems should be improved in many ways. I think it's a time of reinvention, really. It's a time of change, because just as quickly as we had this never-ending growth and this whole turbo capitalist dogma that we live by in the last 50 years, we now have to have another one. Maybe it's more sustainable, maybe it's a bit more slow, maybe, yeah, people should live a bit simpler lives, should be more in nature and all that. So I really have some optimism when it comes to the automatic corrective effects of certain crises which are happening right now. And yeah, also what's good now is that this looks pretty cool. Nobody can say, oh, Russia is actually pretty nice and Putin is actually an ally to the West. No, he's not. Now we know he's not, okay? Yeah, it's looking dangerous right now in some sense, because people in India and China and even Africa kind of like Putin, actually. I'm not sure why, really, but he's been working on these relationships and he's strategic enough to build new alliances without the West. And I really hope that there's not going to be this weird new Cold War between the Western countries, the free countries, and the unfree countries, because I'm not even sure if we would win it right now against all those countries, which many of whom have nuclear weapons too. And they have weird leaders too, like Xi or Modi or whoever is the leader right now in India. Too much power concentrated in one place. When are humans finally going to learn that this is not a good idea? The problem is concentrated power combined with propaganda and censorship and just fear of the repercussions if you criticize anyone. It's just such an efficient system. It works really well. It works incredibly well. I mean, just history shows so much, even in Germany with Gestapo. You're probably going to betray your neighbor before you endanger your own family. That's just human nature, unfortunately. Are we humans becoming wiser and smarter? I'm not really sure. At the same time, I'm still slightly optimistic that everything that sucks right now has a corrective effect, that people are becoming kinder and smarter eventually, and that people are going to emerge who will have the energy to change things for the better. And I think I have huge hopes for those older generations to die off, who still believe in this macho shit and this nationalism. And we have to, I don't know, I just want to get rid of it quickly. And I feel like young people don't have that as much. They have their own problems. They've been maybe kind of brainwashed into, I don't know, other things. There's an epidemic of mental illness, drug abuse, which we have to take care of, but it shows maybe that we're in a sick system, which we need to change. And we can change it. I'm optimistic about it. So yeah, again, this was a bit of a rant. I hope not too negative. I could obviously list hundreds of other crises that we have. And I think this is, in a stoic way, we have to kind of learn to live with crisis. You should know that at any point in time there's going to be some crisis. And another thing you should learn is that the media profits off of these crises. So they're always going to push this button of fear very hard. The ruling class, let's just assume it exists, profits off of your fear. The media makes money when you click on this headline saying that the world is going to end. So just prepare yourself that the media is always going to push some kind of thing that really scares you. Be it some kind of disease, be it war, be it terror attacks, whatever it may be. So this is one thing you should be able to learn with. Also, don't buy into it fully. Don't believe that what they're saying is really true. it might actually be a good idea to just not read it anymore, to not consume TV news anymore, and to just, it's just toxic for your own mental health. It's not gonna make you happy. Where's Larissa gone? Do you see those big boats back there? But yeah, learning to live with crisis I think is important, because they're part of human nature and they're part of life. Are the crises suddenly gonna stop? No. But I think the huge crisis that we are fearing right now, which is extinction due to a deadly virus or extinction due to a world war with nuclear powers, are hopefully not gonna come true. I think the chances of them happening are, I don't know, less than 5%, so I'm just assuming it's not gonna happen. And we can be reasonable. So I really hope that you don't lose hope either, and you stay optimistic, because humans are actually great. I mean, we still create so much pieces of art, awesome music, awesome video games. Like the fact that Elden Ring came out after Corona or even during Corona, and such an awesome piece of art. To me, maybe it's insignificant to you, but to me it's a sign that we haven't lost our mojo, and that we still have this appreciation for beauty, and I think we're not going to just destroy this world, which gives so much to us. Alright, so let me know what you think about this topic. I have to find my partner. I lost her somewhere. I hope I don't know where she is really. I'm afraid I lost her. Thank you so much for listening.